A More Perfect Union, The Story of Our Constitution by Betsy and Giulio Maestro. 200 years ago, America was still a very young country. Representatives from the 13 colonies met in 1776 to write the Declaration of Independence, which told King George III of England that the colonies wanted to rule themselves. The colonists formed their own government and fought the Revolutionary War to win their freedom. The map is showing you the United States in 1787. But 10 years later, in 1786, America was in trouble. The government was not working well. Many people were poor. The 13 states were not cooperating with one another. The government had no way to raise money, and there was no president to help the states work together as one nation. The leaders of the new country were very worried and sad to see America in such trouble. They were afraid the country would fall apart if something was not done soon to make the government strong. These men decided to hold a special meeting called a convention to figure out what could be done. A few leaders from each state were invited to come to Philadelphia in May of 1787. Important men began arriving in Philadelphia. George Washington and James Madison came from Virginia. Alexander Hamilton was sent from New York, and Benjamin Franklin was there to speak for Pennsylvania. Many delegates stayed at the Indian Queen, one of the nicest inns. Before the convention began, the men were talking over their ideas and plans. Nearly all of them knew one another, as some of them had helped write the Declaration of Independence. Many had fought in the Revolutionary War, and most had served in the government. Now they were all anxious to help their country again. The convention was to begin on May 14th, but most of the delegates did not arrive by that date. Travel was very slow in those days. Some of the men came long distances by horseback, carriage, or ship. The trip to Philadelphia from New Hampshire or Georgia could take 2 or 3 weeks. In addition, the weather was bad. Finally, by May 25th, most of the delegates had arrived and the convention began. The convention took place in the State House on Chestnut Street. This building, which we now call Independence Hall, is where the Declaration of Independence had been signed 11 years before. At the very first meeting, the delegates voted to make George Washington the leader of the convention. James Madison offered to write down everything that happened during the meetings, so there would be a record of all that was said and done. Even though the convention lasted for 16 weeks, Madison did not miss a single meeting. His work was so important that he is called the father of the Constitution. When George Washington took his place at the desk on the platform, Benjamin Franklin noticed a sun carved on his chair. Franklin wondered whether it was a rising sun or a setting sun. He did not have much time to think about it, however, as the work of the convention had begun. During the next few days, the men made a set of rules to help the convention run smoothly. Some of the rules were, each state would have one vote. A majority or more than half the votes would rule, and everything that happened at the meetings would be kept a secret until after the convention was over. Some of those who had arrived in Philadelphia early, including George Washington and James Madison, had come up with a plan to form a new government. Governor Edmund Randolph of Virginia presented his plan to the convention, so it became known as the Virginia Plan. That plan called for a government elected or chosen by the people. It would have 3 parts: a president, a Congress or a group of people to make laws, and a law court to make a decision about those laws. Each state would choose delegates to serve in Congress. The number of delegates from each state would depend on the size of the state. This meant that big states would have more power than small states because they would have more votes in Congress.